what I expect here is that it would have been a total failure, but it's just going to be forgettable. Welcome back to the news, everyone. Today we've got a few really interesting stories for you. We've got punks, we've got pirates, we've got police arrests, and of course laughing at Ubisoft, because that's just the way of things. To get things started then, Matt, let's talk about Cyberpunk. So you'll have seen our video on Cyberpunk recently. We do, though, have some pretty damn incredible numbers that are showing the Edge Runner effect, which really is just like what happened with Witcher 3. So as we knew, the game was getting around like its most concurrency since its launch, around the time, of course, of Edge Runners and the Edge Runners update. Well, we've now got updated sales information. So the game had 8 million pre-orders before launch. It hit 13 million sales by the end of December 2020. The December 2021 financial report revealed that it had reached 18 million, and now, as of the end of September, it has hit 20 million. And the thing is, when we're talking about numbers like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 million, we're just like, oh yeah, it's one more, it's two more. And then you remember the amount of zeros. So a move from 18 million to 20 million is a lot of sales. It is more sales than the vast majority of video games even get. And I suppose it would have been nice if we got more of a granular view at how many of these sales would have been clustered around the anime. But certainly paying attention to the news, between the update, the anime, it just created a positive story. And I think that's just meant this positive feedback cycle that has got more people willing to pick up the game.
Yeah, completely makes sense. But for a bit of context, 20 million is also what Horizon Zero Dawn, that was the last major milestone it broke after releasing on PC. So it's very much like, how well Sony loved that IP and absolutely extolled its virtues and praised its successes. That is a hell of a lot. That is a substantial amount of sales overall. Although it is interesting, you'd expect to be bigger, but even then, if that is driving, because they say over 20 million, even if that is driving an extra 2 mil, that's so much revenue. Especially as the game's not tanked in price substantially. You'd imagine with all of the Witcher kind of making its waves after the TV show, there's a lot of really deep discounts on that for buying it on PC and stuff like that. Especially even with the full collection was cheap enough. So it's that case of they've completely succeeded with this in a way that is kind of makes sense, right? Makes sense with every time anyone else does it, it just kind of works. So they've extolled that.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Personally, I cannot wait to see what the Red mod tools are going to do when that comes out next year. I think that's going to be... Well, again, actually, it's funny. Andrew Wilson talking about the whole time on brand correlates the money spent. It doesn't necessarily matter if we make the content or users make the content. Obviously, this is not a free-to-play Nightmare Escape game, but the fundamental point whenever it comes to user-generated content is there. So I'd love to see the creativity people come out with. All right, so this is a story of East and West working together. And funny enough, we have another such story in the form of Wild Hearts, which is Electronic Arts deciding, hey, Monster Hunter, let's do that. So they're working with Koei Tecmo Omega Force. They've announced Wild Hearts, which is going to be coming out February 17th.
Yeah, that's going to be out before a certain game we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's a crazy thing where, I genuinely didn't believe this when it happened. So EA and Omega Force are working together on a game. Because if you're not aware, Omega Force are the people behind basically all of the Warriors games, right? All of the Dynasty Warriors, the Muso games as they're called. And there's this kind of crazy idea of, people went, Warriors game, Monster Hunter? But they also have this series. I think they released 2 games and then a remaster of the first in Tokiden, which are basically they weren't quite full Monster Hunter in the same sense, but there's a lot of similarities. They were a couple people against a big enemy. So they have their chops there.
Now the pitch for the game is, of course, quite simple, right? It is action-based gameplay, dashing, jumping, grappling. Grappling's always fun. Sliding. Thematically, we're more sort of technology versus the natural world. Yeah, it is what it is. I think it's one of those games, honestly, where you look at the gameplay trailer, you'll instantly know if it is for you. And I think for a lot of people, they're instantly going to see that it is for them. I think the creature designs are really cool. I think we probably won't perhaps have the polish that Capcom were able to achieve with Monster Hunter World and stuff like that, just given how absolutely goddamn incredible that game looks. But this is another entry It's another game like that. We're all eating a little bit better. It is kind of funny, though, EA just doing a game like this. I suppose similar to how FromSoft and Activision got together to do Sekiro. You're like, oh yeah, you just did that, and it was super successful.
Yeah, it's really easy to forget that one because it was so out of left field in Activision. That didn't seem like an Activision game, right? So people are kind of hoping this is the same here, where it's just, oh, Omega Force are going to make a Token game, and EA are like, you guys making Monster Hunter? We want in on that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And then they throw a load of money at them.
And to be honest, I think as gamers, this is a lot of what we would really like to see, Because what do these publishers have? They have capital, right? What is their job? It is to efficiently allocate that capital into development. Now, obviously, as time went on in the industry, I think things got more and more and more first party, right? More first party for a while, more on first-party owned platforms because it's just far more financially efficient to sell your PC game in Origin than it is in Steam. But we're kind of seeing that swing back round. And for all of us, we look at this sort of thing and we think, okay, so Electronic Arts has this many developers, it has this technology, it'll do its own thing. If the EA Originals label is able to get more funding within the organization and then intelligently spend that by scouting out really good games from large independent studios, then that does open up a whole, you could maybe say, AA or whatever. It does open up this whole kind of wide world of games that are often not the sorts of games we've been, mega used to. Because it has all just turned into big, recurring spend tentpole titles.
Yeah, that's why I'm happy with this being an EA original label game as opposed to an EA game, because I would expect EA to try to get some of the live service, because that's what they want, right? They always talk about wanting that kind of thing. But this is an EA Originals, and what EA Originals has had success in very recently is, I think, of everything, It Takes Two.
Yeah.
It Takes Two. Literally, the EA Originals label got a Game of the Year winner. And the people that is like, oh, hell yeah. There's stuff like Unravel as well. There's Rocket Arena, which didn't go so well. And there's Knockout City, which is trucking along just about okay. So there's a little bit of mixture in terms of how the games have turned out. But you go to Omega Force, you go, hey, we've got EA money, and it's not going to be, hundreds of millions of EA money, but it's probably going to be more money than Omega Force have seen outside of them working on Hyrule Warriors and I can't remember the name of the Fire Emblem Muso. Fire Emblem, no, Heroes is the gacha game. It doesn't matter, but I think it was just Fire Emblem Warriors. But the thing about that is, there's another studio that worked pretty closely on titles with Nintendo and did support work for them. And then whenever they were told, hey, do you want to make your own game? They showed up and they were just fully just such a glow up in terms of what they went from to what they were able to do. And that was Monolith Soft with the Xenoblade Chronicles games. Yeah. And everyone goes, oh yeah, you're the Breath of the Wild and Smash Ultimate support studio. And they just drop Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and people are like, yeah, it's just one of the best RPGs. And some people disagree, but it's just one of the best RPGs in a hell of a long time.
And if you do disagree with that, don't announce your publisher shortly after.
Yeah,
people will still feel it. Dunk woke the dragon.
Yeah, so there's this whole thing now where you've got Omega Force with EA money, and they're not going to be able to compete with Monster Hunter like blow for blow. That's not going to happen. However, this is likely going to be, if not a great game, a hell of a good game, because the token in games certainly stood up as solid 7s. So that, with a bit of money, bit of stuff, you're like,
absolutely.
Hey, good game, sweet.
Hey, if you want to get your tax bill down by just spending more money, this is a pretty awesome way to do it.
Yep, sure is.
Right? So, you know what? To Activision doing Sekiro, to them doing Wild Hearts, fuck yeah, that's exactly what we want to see. Of course, the sad thing with Activision is it was kind of just Sekiro, and it kind of would have been nice if their vast quantity of capital went into more and more games. But it is what it is. That said, though, you can play this in February. You would have expected to have been able to, as I know you do, spend hundreds of hours playing Skull and Bones before that. But no, you'll in fact have to wait until March the 9th because Skull and Bones, the humongous and Ubisoft original disaster, has been delayed from November 8th, 2022 to March 9th, 2023. This is a game that, holy shit, it has been in development hell since shortly after, around the time of Assassin's Creed Black Flag. They kept on changing it, going through creative, going through creative staff, going through game directors, all chaos at the Ubisoft studio. I think it ended up with the Singaporean government giving them a little bit of a look at. Now, A lot of people expected worse things to be found, and I don't think nothing relevant to the point of Singapore stepping in seems to have been found. But generally, it's been a studio with quite a lot of rumbly news. We covered Skull and Bones, I think initially the summer of last year. Shortly after that, I think one of the developers from that team reached out to us in email, and it was just like, kind of a little bit of an anecdote to a lot of that stuff that did support the issues. So overall, what happened then is this game, I believe it was like leaked super shortly ahead of the reveal. Then the reveal happened. People looked at the reveal and thought, this is just seemingly significantly worse than what Rare have been able to do with Sea of Thieves. Yeah, it maybe has a more photoreal art style, which some people will like more, and that's fair enough, but it didn't really seem to have the combat depth. The progression seemed to be highly uninspired. To be honest, my view of what I saw was, so you've got the assets, you've got the systems, you've just quickly designed a progression loop, and you're just going to go wham, bam, done. Let's just do this and do something else afterwards. That's kind of what I felt. It just is a game that, well, you know what, certainly looked like it was in development hell. So for them to have all this development hell, then feel confident enough to announce November 9th, only to then have to delay it by like 5 months, that does not point to good things. In my head, I have to imagine this is the sort of situation where Ubisoft management thought, all right, that's grand, let's go ahead. Let's do that. And perhaps staff on the ground were just screaming internally. Obviously, I can't prove any of that, but this definitely stinks.
I mean, that's the thing. Everything from Ubisoft is like, until they have a really successful release that isn't Assassin's Creed Valhalla, everyone will just assume the worst. And this is a game that comes from their darkest era. Mm-hmm. Like their darkest history of, this is where we've made the worst shit that no one wants to play. And that's the thing you're going to run into whenever you're like, got these really long projects and really long delayed projects. Because what are you going to do? Restart it? You can't do that. You could certainly revamp it, but you can't restart it, which means they are just sitting on this, what is effectively a turd. And they're just like, how far can you polish this? The answer is probably not far enough, because everyone will know what it is under the surface.
Yeah.
And you can't get around that. And you also can't really cancel it because you need to make your money back on it. And you also probably can't cancel it because then the Singaporean government will be like, where'd all the money go that we give you to subsidize this? What are you doing? That'd probably put them in like actual serious trouble. So I sat there and I'm like, I guess we'll delay it a little bit. But it's that thing of, strategically, if you want to release this game, you can't go toe-to-toe with any other game.
Yes.
Not at full price. Not when you're like not confident in it. You have to just go, if we release now, we will sink. The pun intended. We will not be able to survive against all of the other people in this market. We're not going to be able to beat, like, given the market they're probably aiming for with a full release like this, it's very kind of, hey, play on a pirate ship. It's not exactly super core gamer stuff. It's very much like, well, the more Christmassy kind of gamer purchasing market, their entire, like, all their money's actually spoken for with this holidays releases.
Yeah.
So you can tell they just went, February, we can't do February. There's too many games coming out there. Because February is November 2. Of
course.
And now they're like, well, what's November 3? March, I guess. Maybe people will have like the room in their budget then and they'll be finished playing Modern Warfare. They'll be able to go, yeah, sure, we'll pick up whatever's cool.
What I expect here is that it would have been a total failure, but it's just going to be forgettable. With all of these delays, Ubisoft may think that they're edging people, but absolutely not, because I don't think there's going to be an ounce of pleasure found in any of this. The next thing, then, we do want to highlight something pretty cool.
Very cool.
Actually. And that is that Masahiro Sakurai, who you will know from things such as Smash Bros, has got a YouTube channel now, and together with whatever team, they're just doing small, focused game design videos that truly are fantastic. I can even give like a little bit of an anecdote to this one that applies to an in-production game. You know which one it is, but obviously with it being in production, I'm not. Yeah, suffice to say, I was sent a little bit of gameplay footage of this in-development title, and, the system in that, it was like, okay, but, it looked quite weightless. And then I go, oh, how about I just send the Sakurai video and hit stop? And 1 or 2 days later, I open up Messenger. There it is, with hit stop implemented, and it feels so much better. So, thanks, Sakurai. Anyway, his channel's just awesome. It's like, it is in Japanese, but it's all like very well subtitled, and it is just an absolute treat. The production values are great, and it's also a good example of, I mean, I won't say show don't tell, because you do have to tell when you're explaining things. I would call it show and tell. They do a really good job of telling you what the thing is and then really showing it in action. I think it's the sort of thing that any casual fan of video games would find interesting, because it gives voice and increases understanding of things that you'll have seen but probably not thought about, because you always just took them for granted. So there, that's our highlight.
Yeah, it is extremely good. It's like, it's edited in the same style all of like the Smash showcases were, because it uses the same company called Cubist who do the editing, and they are like genuinely such high quality edits. Everything is fantastic. The custom footage they use from like debug Smash builds to like show off, hey, here's what it would look like, say, without hit stop in that one example. And there's just this array of videos that are just perfect. And it's the example of, a lot of the time we don't see like all of the, I guess, the information, the skills that people build up over like a career.
Yeah.
Come into form. Obviously, a lot of people go and write books or teach classes or stuff like that. But now, because we see it in other industries, right? You see other industries go, yeah, well, might as well do YouTube because it's a great learning platform. But we don't see that quite as polished on YouTube. You'll just have people talking in the corner. Like, I know a lot of ex-Warcraft devs do that, where they'll just like Twitch stream something and talk about it. But this is like full on, hey, we're going super produced, super like, here's real fundamentals, real basics that you'll want to know and are interesting and well presented. You're like, oh, this is exactly what you should do once you're finished like your magnum opus. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna sort of half retire, but do this instead. It is profoundly good.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Yeah. It absolutely is, and I think it's worth your time. Now, our next thing does kind of involve game development, because it is Grand Theft Auto. And it's one of those interesting things, I think. You look at all of that stuff with Sakurai, and you kind of think, wow, look at Smash Bros. Without hit stop. It looks like it would play like complete shit. And it was interesting seeing those early versions of GTA6, along with quite a lot of, skeptical comment from people who don't understand how games are made. And in fairness, they shouldn't have to understand how games are made. Like, I think that's an unreasonable expectation. And yeah, you can hold people to that expectation to dunk on them on Twitter, but overall, like, somebody can like a movie without understanding all the cinematography. So it was an interesting little thing. But the update to this story is, well, interesting, because the hacker, you could maybe more say social engineer, because I think that was the vulnerability, behind the GTA and Uber hacks, has actually been arrested and will be appearing in court in London. Now, the person is unidentified because they are minor, so under 18. Basically, a teenager owned Uber and owned Rockstar. And I think that does just show what a social engineering vulnerability is like, right?
Yeah, there's like, it's so annoying for cybersecurity people, because you're like, well, how do you solve this problem? Oh, you train people. But then people are always like, I'm trying to put this the right way. It's like the vulnerabilities of people kind of come out when you can train them, but you need to train people so hard to not ever make mistakes. And that's always how it goes.
Kind of reminds me of, I forget the person's name, I think it was Hush Puppy, but they did that scam where they would basically social engineer their way to getting an actual invoice from a company, and then they just swap the details. It's a really common type of email scam, and I think it was like 200 million plus that his ring got. And they ended up being got because basically they were flaunting shit on Instagram while the FBI were looking into them.
Oh, that's the same as the what game was it? I can't remember what game it was, but there's some shooter. Can't remember if it was mobile or PC, and there were a group of Chinese like hackers who were like selling hacks for it. And the only reason they got caught is because they went from having no money whatsoever to like having this really nice office and driving like different sports cars to work every day. And I was like, that's a bit suspicious. Let's investigate that. And I mean, even locally, we have the same joke where it's like, how are they driving that? Oh, they're drug dealers, obviously.
I've literally had that joke with a quite suspiciously placed, maxed out Porsche 911.
Yep.
And we're like, that this is government subsidized housing. And this maxed out 911 is definitely parked here all the time. Yeah, quite funny. Meanwhile, then some new DMs of service that are alleging a 2 billion budget, which is a lot. I would imagine that would probably include like marketing and various other things, not just the core production costs. An interesting thing, though, is that per Tez2, who's a decently like notable leaker, this is a project that has been in full development since before Red Dead Redemption 2, but they are saying that actually it was rebooted around the same time as Red Dead 2.
That's interesting because based on the leaked footage, it didn't seem like it was anything interesting unless they tried to do something a little kind of crazier and then rebooted to pull it back in to kind of follow up on the... I suppose that's right because the great success of GTA Online was a little bit delayed, right? It wasn't... Obviously, GTA 5 was a massive game when it launched, but I guess the extended success, the long-tail success of online wasn't really realized for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's what happened. They're like, hey, we'll just make GTA 6 as normal. And then they went, oh, hang on, we need to re-architect this for online to be way more of a bigger part of the pie, possibly.
One thing that is interesting, and a massive cost of games, is animation. A lot of people think, oh, just mocap it. As if you just kind of go, oh, okay, got the mocap and we've slapped it in. It's a bit like when Andy Serkis calls Gollum or whatever, like digital makeup. That's like kind of underplaying how much work there actually is to do the thing. So there's actually a patent that Take-Two filed, or the Rockstar filed even, and one of its inventors didn't join the company until 2019. Since then, a whole bunch of animation, like R&D developers have been like hired up. So that's kind of interesting because some animation and locomotion stuff is actually there and in some of the leaked footage. Basically, it comes down to like machine learning animation stuff, which all seems pretty cool. But anyway, there was a reboot, but it actually seems that between perhaps you could say maybe some new tech advancements, stuff like that, maybe what you were saying as well, plus them fixing up their company culture, these may be things that ultimately will work out all right in their favor.
Yep.
Now, a company that hasn't really done things so well, Twitch. So, look, with Twitch, you've heard through 2 videos now our takes on the situation, and there is a little bit more. So, to put a lovely capstone on an awful week of Twitch news, the Senior Vice President of Global Creators, Constant Knight, quit after the announcements of the creator pay change, right? So that is really quite bad. She worked under Dan Clancy, who is the president of Twitch. He's the guy who, of course, put his name to those new changes. And yeah, she announced her departure the day that was made, which, I mean, she could have left quietly, could have chosen a different day, right? And I then want to bring this into what DJ Wheat has said. And it's funny, I remember way back in the day, it's like DJ Wheat, In Control, Total Biscuit, StarCraft 2. And then, of course, he ends up with Twitch and all of that. And man, he had some very goddamn choice comments. I just want to read his tweets out because I think they're noteworthy. Now, this does come in a quote of Cecilia D'Anastasio, who's a journalist, currently at Bloomberg, I believe. He said, imagine spending 4 years of your life telling people the leadership was growing more out of touch with creators every day, and then having them give you the impression that you were wrong and disruptive. My job was never to make money, it was to put creators first. I'm not going to pretend there are not extremely complex nuances behind a business like Twitch becoming profitable, but it hurts to see Twitch move away from the things that were imperative to its success. And, Godspeed to the people fighting the good fight. I also want to make it clear that there were people at Twitch who listened but felt powerless to do anything. My time at Twitch was an experience I would never want to give up, as respect. And this is going on with just general sort of comment and opinion on a very profitability-focused Dan Clancy and of management being out of touch. And I think ultimately we're seeing just that. I think they are doing what you could maybe say very first-order attempts to increase how much money they're earning. But I think that a world where a Amazon company, Twitch, is having to backfill ad inventory with a sister company, Audible, and continually give me the same Audible ad again and again and again and again. Like, just think how advertising works. That is not going to be high CPM advertising. That's not going to be a big earner. So I just think that overall Twitch, they do struggle. And when you look at like the total percentage of watch time and stuff, they are completely dwarfed by YouTube. Because that is the thing. Even though they are owned by Amazon, they are dwarfed by YouTube. YouTube is more mature. It has a lot of tech built to make sure it's I guess you could say, a creator economy with reasonably strong integrity. That is something that Twitch does not have. And ultimately, Twitch are now left, I think, on the back foot, having to use the knobs and levers that they currently have right now, having to tweak those to increase their profitability, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, they did not do the work years and years ago when they probably should have.
They just rode the coattails of being culturally relevant.
That's it.
That's literally all they did. And they just didn't do the hard work. That's more or less it. And it happens almost like so many businesses of that kind of, hey, we've got a great idea, we've got a great culture. Like, that's fine, but if you're going to go toe to toe with something like YouTube, you need to be better. And they quite simply, in no capacity, are.
Yeah, that's unfortunately that is it. And that's also it for today's show. So I hope you enjoy this format. I think we're going to do this more and more because there's so much news that like we can't do a full video on, but I feel like it's all stuff that's worth talking about. So it gives us that opportunity, which to be honest is always a lot of fun. If you want to do anything to support us on your way out, of course, The Pale Beyond is the game that we are developing. One of the newest guy in the team, Justin, he's working on a whole bunch of like QA testing, feedback, stuff like that. And he just finished for the first time. And suffice to say, I think we're all very happy with the reaction. So good shit's coming. You can check out The Pale Beyond on Steam if you would like a Antarctic inspired survival narrative role-playing game. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow.